Hello everyone, I'm Kim and welcome to my channel. Today's video is not what I normally post, so I thought I would work my way through my subscriber requests. Now, one of you lovely subscribers asked whether I would show you how I trace patterns. I have traced the fantail sweatshirt and you've already seen me make up this sweatshirt, and I've already posted a video showing the sweatshirt that I've made. And whilst I was making that, I also filmed my tracing process, and you will see that shortly further along in this video. But what I thought I would do is I'd give you a little bit of background on why I trace my patterns. Firstly, I trace them because years and years ago I had a pattern that I absolutely adored, and I'd made quite a few things from it, and I hadn't really been doing sewing seriously for very long, and I came to make something from this pattern and I couldn't find all of the pattern pieces. Now, years and years back, I never had a lovely sewing room. My sewing stash was literally crammed into every corner in the house. So when I came to move into this, this specific area where I could store all of my stuff, I genuinely believed that I would find these missing pattern pieces, but they never turned up. And the pattern itself is no longer in publication, so I've never been able to replace it. And that is one of the reasons why I do trace my patterns, because it was just so annoying. And I still think about that pattern. I mean, I've still got the envelope and the other bits of pattern pieces in the envelope, still hoping that one day these pieces will just turn up. They won't, but you never know. Miracles happen. And the other reason why I trace my patterns is because when I first started sewing, paper patterns were really cheap. They were only a couple of quid, but now we have a lot of indie pattern companies. You're paying for their creativity, really, which is wonderful, but there's a cost to it. So some of these paper patterns are becoming increasingly more expensive, and I don't have a problem with that at all. I'm happy to buy these patterns, but what I do like to do is I like to make sure that I preserve the original pattern and I trace off it so that I can always go back to that original. And that's what I do. So in the video that I'm going to show you shortly, it will show you me tracing out the fantail sweatshirt pattern. It's a very simple pattern to trace out, but to be honest with you, any pattern that you trace, you're just really going around the outline and just making sure that you're transferring any notches and information from your original through the carbon paper onto your traced paper. So this is the first of my subscriber requests. I hope you enjoy it. Right, so I've gathered together all the bits I need to start my tracing. So I have, first of all, I have the pattern. So the pattern was originally printed on A0 paper, and what I've done is I've opened it all up and I've just roughly cut around each pattern piece. So it's just roughly cut around. I have the pattern instructions here so that I can find out which pattern pieces I actually need to trace. I have some carbon paper here in it's both orange and blue. I generally use the orange when I'm tracing, but whichever takes your fancy, it doesn't really make a difference. I also have a rotary cutter, and this rotary cutter is my paper rotary cutter, which I only use for paper. This is my tracing wheel, and it's serrated, but it's not sharp. It just leaves a nice impression. So if you press firmly against the carbon paper, it will leave a nice impression on the paper underneath. Then I have a Sharpie pen, a crochet hook or anything which has a smooth end to it, because this will just help you make different marks in the carbon paper, things like tailor's tack marks, notches, squiggly lines. You'll see it be used further on in the video. And I have a ruler. I generally just have a ruler to help guide me around some of the straight lines, and I have some spot and cross paper. Now I have this on a roll. I bought this years and years and years and years ago, and you can buy it on roll still. You can buy it in meterage, and I will put a supplier in the description where you can get it from. I think you can even buy it off of Amazon if you want to. So first step is to find out which pattern pieces you need to trace. So I have the pattern here, the fantail sweatshirt. So I'm just going to find the layout. Here it is, and it will tell me here which pieces I need to trace. I need to find pattern pieces 1, 2, 3, 7, 8 and 9. Okay, so I shall go and dig those out and then I shall come back. Right, so I have found all my pattern pieces. So what I'm going to do to start with, I'm just going to trace around 2 smaller pieces so that you can see them better under the camera, because some of the other pieces are a bit big and I think they go out of the shot. So I have my spot and cross paper facing up. Then on top of your tracing paper you need to rest your carbon paper. So I've got my orange carbon paper here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to rest that face down onto the spot and dot. Okay, and then pattern piece 8 and pattern piece number 7. So I've got 2 pieces that I'm going to trace round. So you need to pin them. So I pin them because I don't want them to move when I'm tracing them. So I'm just going to pin them into place. So I just literally pin through the pattern, through the carbon paper and the tracing paper. You don't need a lot of pins, you just need them enough to secure the pattern piece. So once you've determined which size that you need to cut out, you can then trace around those sections. So I decided to trace out size 18, which is a US 14, and all of the lines on these 2 pieces, on these 2 pattern pieces are straight. So I'm going to use my ruler, and I've got my tracing wheel here. So I literally follow around the pattern at that specified size. If your pins go across your tracing line, don't worry, because with this serrated tracing wheel it will just literally roll over the pins. They won't get in the way. So just go around the outside I'm just using my ruler really to help me. Just keeps a nice straight line. A nice and firm pressure on your tracing wheel, because what you're doing is you're pushing that carbon paper effectively onto your tracing paper. Hopefully my head won't get in the way too much. Right, so once you've been around the outline, just look at your pattern pieces again and just make sure there's nothing else that needs to be transferred. So here on pattern piece number 8, we've got some squiggly lines. So I'm just literally going to use my crochet hook because it's got a nice smooth end and just go over those squiggly lines. Okay, and the same for this one, well, there's more squiggly lines. But there's also a fold line here, so I'm just going to also transfer that because that is obviously important piece of information. Right, I can't see anything else. So once you've done that, you can then remove the pins. Remove your pattern pieces and remove your tracing paper. And what you should be left with is 2 outlines. So I'm hoping that you can see those, and they are effectively just the carbon paper has just been pressed into the tracing paper. So now you have your traced pieces, you just need to go and cut them out of the tracing paper. So it's effectively use your rotary cutter or your scissors if you don't use a rotary cutter and just go around that outline of your pattern. Right, so we have our 2 pieces traced. So I'm just going to move the spot and cross out of the way. So what I do is I just double check that the pattern pieces still match. So pattern piece number 8, just go over, just literally lay it on top of your traced piece. It's cut out the right size and it's the right shape, so that's great. So that belongs to that one. And this one, perfect. So they're both cut out correctly. So what you need to do is, once you know that your pattern piece is the correct size and you've traced it correctly, you need to then transfer all the information from the original pattern piece to the traced pattern piece. So first of all, I start with the number and what it's called. So this is called back hemband. Says cut 1 on fold, and here we had a fold symbol, so, and we did trace it in, and I'm just going to put that in so it's more obvious. Okay. We've also got a squiggly line. Let's put that in. I also put the size that I traced. And last of all, I put the name of the pattern. And the reason why I do this is because if this pattern piece becomes separated from the original, then you know which pattern envelope it belongs to, and you can go and put it back in its right home. And that is it. So that's your first pattern piece traced. So I have the front pattern piece in front of me, and I thought I would show you how I trace this out, because there's a few more extra markings on here. Because this pattern piece makes up not just the sweatshirt but also the woven shirt, and there are some outlines that are different, so you need to make sure that you are actually tracing out the correct lines. So for instance, you can see there are two different necklines here. So this one here is for the shirt and this one is for the sweatshirt, and we need to trace the one for the sweatshirt. So you do need to identify which tracing lines you need to follow. And there are also some details down here at the bottom as well, so I'm going to trace those. Now I've put this on the side so that I can get it all into the camera so that you can see the whole thing being traced. So as before, you have your spot and dot paper facing up, and I just lay the tracing paper on top, and also lay my original pattern piece facing up. So once you've got that all flattened down, yet again I pin it so it does not move. So I'm literally just going to put a few pins in to secure it. So those are our pins in, and I'm just going to start off by just doing the straight line. So we've got the front section here. I'm just going to trace down that. Okay. And then I'm just going to follow around the neckline and then literally follow the pattern around. So I'm tracing a size 18, so I'm having to follow the green dashed line, so that's what I'm going to do. Right, so I've been around the whole outline of the pattern, but there's some pattern detail inside the actual pattern, so I'm going to just literally transfer those as well. So I've got the seam allowance line here. It's a nice straight line. Then this line here is the hem line. Just going to pull that pin out. Okay, now I can see that there are 4 lines here, and I know by looking at those that they obviously are the size lines. So we've got 4 different sizes. So this first one would be blue, the next one would be purple, and the next one would be green. And the green, we need to trace the green one through. It's not very clear on the patterns, but sometimes you just need to think, you know, why are there 4 lines there? And it's obviously going to relate to the actual sizing. So just think it through. If there's something that doesn't look right, just have a little think and think about the sizing of your pattern. Okay, so there are all the lines, and I'm just going to quickly go around the outline and see if there are any notches. So there's a notch here in the sleeve, so I'm just literally going to put a line through that. Just carry on through the pattern, and there aren't any more. So that's the notches done. I can also see that there is a lengthen and shorten line, and I do like to put those in. So literally just go across. Go across. Right, and that is it. So now I can take all my pins out, as before, and then once you've taken all your pins out, you just lift the original pattern off along with the carbon paper. And you can see that there is your traced pattern. I'm not too sure how clear it comes up on the video, but it's very clear here. So when you're doing this yourself, you will be able to see these lines very easily. So as before, as soon as you've traced it, just go around and cut it out. And yet again, I just use my ruler to help me, just to keep the lines nice and straight when they are straight, obviously. So like before, once you've cut your pattern out, just lay your original over the top, just to make sure that it's all been cut out correctly. Yeah, so that's been cut, traced properly. So what you need to do is just transfer that information again. So I usually work around the edge, so I had a notch here up in the raglan sleeve area, so I've just put the appropriate notch mark, and then I transfer all the rest of the information. So it's number 1, and then we have all of this detail down here, and at the moment it doesn't look anything because you just have the lines, but once you put all of the appropriate information on as well, it will all make sense. So just literally draw in the line, so just going over your traced lines. So here it says front elastic channel, so just duplicate that information. Front finished hemline, and I'm just going to put SA there for seam allowance. And that is it. And last of all, I'm just going to put the name of the pattern. So that is how you trace a pattern. Well, that's how I trace patterns. There are many ways to trace patterns, but I always revert to this way. I just find it the easiest to do. I hope you found that interesting. It's not difficult to trace pattern pieces out. The only thing people don't like is because it takes time. But I believe it's all in the preparation, and it gives you an opportunity to have a look at each of your pattern pieces, just to check the layout of everything, where everything fits together, and to get a basic understanding of that pattern before it hits the fabric and you start laying it out on fabric. So for me, it's also an additional understanding of the pattern before you move through the stages of cutting fabric and sewing. Okay, so if you have any questions, please put them in comments and I will come back to you, and I will see you all very soon. Take care. Bye.